If you want to know what is a double exposure, what affects exposure, how to take better and more interesting double exposures, with some examples, then keep watching this video. First, let's understand how the double exposure process works. A double exposure is two exposures or images in one film frame. When you take a photo, the shutter opens and light passes through the camera's lens. The light falls onto a photosensitive material like photographic film or the image sensor in digital cameras. For film, the light causes a chemical reaction that forms a latent image within the film. Then during the chemical process of development, your photo appears. For digital, the simplified version is the light info is captured by the camera's electronics, and through analog to digital conversion, the final photo is constructed. Brightness and contrast are two image properties that affect a photo's exposure. Brightness is the overall lightness or darkness of the image. The amount of exposure controls brightness. Less exposed equals a darker image, and more exposed equals a lighter image. Contrast is the scale of difference between light and dark that allows an image to be visible. Zero contrast in an image means there is no difference between light and dark. Every image ends up being one color, a mid-tone gray. Let's see an example using high contrast. Here, we see words appear in the blue sky, like a skywriting effect. First, I photographed white sign letters on a black background. The darker area remained less exposed. So when I took the second photo of the blue sky outside, it was more accurately exposed. You can keep the opposite in mind too. Very bright parts of the first photo, like the letters here, are more noticeable because they're more exposed, and the more likely they will be seen against a contrasting color. If there were clouds in the sky, there would be less color contrast and an increased brightness to the exposure, creating a different, less appealing result. Besides finding differences in light, you can control light. You can select and block areas of exposure. Here, I created a split effect. I taped off half of the lens, took the first photo, and then moved the tape to the opposite half and took the second. Certain areas of film expose on each tape. I also used the high contrast concept by having a large dark paper square in the first photo arrangement. This created a window for the second picture to show through. These techniques can be applied to digital and video, like in this film I made here. All you need is an idea and the willingness to learn and try it out. Now, not every photo works out like you thought. Mistakes happen. That's okay. Here are some of the lessons I've learned. Check you're in double exposure mode, noted by this icon or the text description. Otherwise, you only get one photo. So instead of using light rays for an effect, I have what looks like a clue from an X-Files case. Check you have enough external light and/or the flash is on, depending on your setting. Otherwise, the second photo doesn't expose properly to be very visible. Like here, where I wanted a colorful geometric design to appear. The second photo of this pattern is non-existent almost, or very muted. Instant cameras have very small fixed apertures, around f/22, so they don't let in a lot of light under normal shutter speeds. Adjust the external light accordingly. Remember your framing arrangement for each planned photo. Use the center mark in the viewfinder as a guide. Unless you have a SLR camera, the viewfinder is not exactly what the lens sees, but it's a good estimation. Here, I framed too much of the blue sky on the first photo instead of focusing on the shadows in the trees. So when I photographed the flowers and leaves, they only showed up in a small area, and majority of it was washed out in the photo due to overexposure. Hopefully, the quick exposure lesson in this video and these tips are helpful on your creative journey. The best advice I've ever found is from a Polaroid camera manual from the early 1960s. Even the best camera needs help from the photographer. That help can be summed up in one sentence. Plan and think before you shoot. Now go on, start creating, and remember to keep creating.